The ship was dying, and Park knew she would die with it. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms screamed in her ears. Smoke filled the small cockpit of her scout vessel, the horizon's edge, making it hard to breathe. Through the cracked window, she could see the green and blue surface of a moon rushing toward her at terrible speed. 3 warships had come out of nowhere. One moment was alone in empty space, doing her simple survey mission. The next moment, plasma fire was tearing her ship apart. She had managed to send one distress signal before everything went wrong. She did not know if anyone had heard it. Pulled hard on the controls, trying to slow her fall. The ship did not listen. Half the systems were dead. The other half were dying. She was a passenger now, trapped inside a metal coffin that was about to become her grave. The trees came up fast. They were not normal trees. Even through the smoke and chaos, could see that they glowed with soft blue and purple light. They were tall, taller than any trees on Earth, and they looked like they were made of crystal rather than wood. The ship hit the first tree and spun. Its head slammed against the console. Stars exploded in her vision. The ship hit another tree, then another. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Something heavy fell on her left arm, and she heard a crack that she knew was bone. Then everything stopped. Did not know how long she was unconscious. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she felt was pain. Her arm was broken, bent at a wrong angle below the elbow. Her head was bleeding. Every part of her body hurt. But she was alive. She laughed, and the laugh turned into a cough. Smoke was still filling the cockpit. She needed to get out. With her good hand, released her safety straps and fell forward onto the broken console. She crawled toward the emergency hatch, pushing aside debris with her one working arm. The hatch was stuck. She kicked it once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th kick, it flew open and fresh air rushed in. Pulled herself out of the ship and fell onto soft ground covered with strange moss. The sky above was purple. 2 moons hung in the distance, one large and one small. The crystal trees rose around her like silent giants, their glow providing soft light even though it seemed to be daytime. The air smelled sweet like flowers, but also strange in a way she could not describe. Lay on the ground for a long time, just breathing. She was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. But she was also alone on an alien moon with a broken arm, no rescue coming, and supplies that were probably destroyed in the crash. She forced herself to move. The next few hours were some of the worst of her life. She went back into the broken ship and searched for anything useful. She found a medical kit, some emergency food packets, a water purifier, and a plasma pistol that still worked. Most other things were destroyed. The hardest part was setting her own bone. Had basic medical training like all scouts, but training and reality were very different things. She found 2 straight pieces of metal from the ship, bit down on a strap of leather, and pushed the bone back into place. She screamed. The sound echoed through the crystal forest, scaring birds that were not birds into the purple sky. Then she wrapped the metal pieces around her arm, secured them tightly, and allowed herself to cry for exactly 5 minutes. After that, she started walking. Walked for 3 days. She followed a small stream, knowing that water meant life and life meant food. She ate her emergency rations slowly, trying to make them last. She slept in the hollow spaces beneath the crystal trees, curled up tight against the cold nights. The forest was full of strange things. She saw creatures that looked like deer but had 6 legs and scales instead of fur. She saw insects the size of her hand that glowed like fireflies. She heard sounds at night that made her grip her plasma pistol tight and pray for morning. On the 4th day, she found the den. Almost walked past it. The entrance was hidden behind a fallen crystal tree, just a dark hole in a rocky hillside. But she heard sounds coming from inside. Weak sounds, sad sounds, the sounds of something small and hurt and afraid. She should have walked away. She knew that. Unknown alien creatures could be dangerous. She had limited supplies and a broken arm and no backup coming. Every survival manual she had ever read told her to avoid unnecessary risks, but had never been good at following those rules. She crawled through the entrance, her plasma pistol ready. The tunnel was short and opened into a small cave. What she saw inside made her stop breathing. A large creature lay dead near the entrance. It was beautiful even in death, covered in fur that seemed to shift colors in the dim light. It had 6 legs, sharp claws, and a face that was somehow both terrifying and noble. Energy burns marked its body. Someone had killed it with weapons, not nature. Behind the dead creature, 3 smaller versions huddled together. Cubs, bobbies. They were each about the size of a large dog, covered in soft fur that was dull and matted. Their eyes were huge and silver, and they reflected light with fear. They were starving, could see their ribs through their fur. Their mother had been dead for days, maybe longer, and they were too young to hunt for themselves. The cubs made weak sounds when they saw her, not aggressive sounds, desperate sounds. They were too weak to run, too hungry to fight. They just looked at her with those big silver eyes, waiting to see if she would help them or hurt them. Looked at the dead mother, killed by weapons. She looked at the 3 orphans, alone and dying. She thought about her grandmother back on Earth, who always said that kindness was the only thing that made humans different from animals. She put away her pistol. She sat down on the cold stone floor. She opened her last protein pack, the one she had been saving for emergencies. The cubs watched her, trembling. Broke the protein pack into 3 pieces. Slowly, carefully, she held out her hand with 1 piece on her palm. The smallest cub moved first. It crept forward on shaky legs, its nose twitching. It sniffed her hand for a long moment. Then, very gently, it took the food from her palm and ate it. Smiled. Tears ran down her dirty face, but she smiled. She did not know it then, but her life had just changed forever. She had just become a mother. The first week was the hardest. The cubs did not trust. They ate the food she gave them, but they ran away whenever she moved too fast or made too much noise. They watched her with those big silver eyes, always ready to flee, always expecting her to hurt them like the creatures who had hurt their mother. Was patient. She had always been patient, even as a child. Her father used to joke that she could outweigh a stone. So she sat quietly in the cave day after day, offering food and asking for nothing in return. She named them on the 3rd day. She knew she probably should not give names to wild alien creatures, but they reminded her of her younger cousins back on Earth, and the names just felt right. The biggest cub she called. He was brave but not smart about it. He always tried to eat first, always pushed his siblings aside, always puffed himself up to look bigger than he was. His cousin was exactly the same way. The female cub she called Myra. Myra was careful and quiet. She watched everything, studied everything, learned from everything. While rushed in without thinking, Myra waited and observed. She was the first one to understand that was not a threat. The smallest cub she called Juno. Juno was the runt, weaker than his siblings, always getting the least food, always sleeping alone at the edge of the group. But he was also the sweetest. He made soft chirping sounds when he was happy, and his fur turned a warm golden color when he felt safe. By the end of the first week, Myra let touch her. It happened by accident. Was handing her food when Myra leaned forward too far and bumped her head against palm. They both froze. Then slowly moved her fingers and scratched behind Myra's ear. Myra closed her eyes and made a sound like a purr. After that, everything changed. Was jealous, of course. He pushed his way forward the next day, demanding the same attention. Scratched his ears too, and his chin, and the spot on his chest where the fur was thickest. Soon all 3 cubs were fighting to get closest to her, bumping each other aside, making angry sounds at siblings who got more pets than they did. Juno won most of those fights, not because he was strong but because he cheated. While and Myra pushed at each other, Juno would sneak around and curl up in his lap. By the time his siblings noticed, he was already asleep against her chest, purring like a small engine. His arm was healing. It still hurt, especially at night, but she could move her fingers now. She had removed the metal splints and replaced them with softer wrappings made from her torn uniform. The bone was setting crooked, but it was setting. She moved her camp to the cave. It was safer there, protected from the rain and wind that sometimes swept through the crystal forest. She built a fire pit at the entrance and learned which of the local plants burned well and which made too much smoke. The cubs grew fast, much faster than any earth animal. By the end of the second week had doubled in size. His claws, which had been soft and pale, were now hard and dark. His baby teeth fell out and were replaced by adult teeth that could crush bone. Realized she was raising predators, apex predators, the most dangerous creatures in this forest. But when she looked at them, all she saw were her children. She taught them to hunt, not because they needed her to teach them, but because she needed to be part of their lives. Her father had taught her to make traps and snares during camping trips when she was young. She used those same skills now, showing the cubs how to catch the six-legged deer creatures, how to find the fat birds that nested in the lower branches, how to dig for the burrowing things that tasted like chicken. The cubs taught her things too. They showed her which plants were safe to eat and which would make her sick. They warned her when dangerous creatures were near, their fur changing to dark colors that meant hide and be quiet. They brought her gifts. Dead animals dropped at her feet like offerings and looked at her with proud eyes until she praised them. Learned their language, not words because they did not use words but sounds and movements and colors. She learned that flattened ears meant anger or fear. She learned that a twitching tail meant excitement. She learned that the soft chirping sound Juno made meant, "I love you," in whatever way these creatures understood love. She made sounds back at them. She could not change her fur color, but she could chirp and growl and purr. The cubs found this very funny at first. Sounds were wrong, like a baby trying to speak, but they understood what she was trying to say, and they loved her for trying. At night, all three cubs slept around her, lay at her back, his large body blocking the cold wind. Myra curled at her feet, always watching the cave entrance, always ready to warn of danger. Juno slept on her chest, his weight making it hard to breathe but his warmth keeping her alive through the cold nights. Sang to them, old Korean songs her grandmother had taught her, lullabies about moons and stars and children who were loved. The cubs did not understand the words, but they understood the feeling. They purred when she sang, their bodies relaxing, their eyes closing. 2 months passed. Now stood as tall as chest. He weighed more than she did. When he yawned, she could count 47 teeth, each one sharp enough to cut metal. His claws could tear through the bark of the crystal trees like paper. Myra was smaller but faster. She had learned to change her fur color so well that she could become almost invisible. She practiced this skill constantly, sneaking up on her brothers, sneaking up on, appearing out of nowhere with a proud look that said, "I could have killed you." Juno was still the smallest, but he was no longer weak. He had grown into a lean, quick hunter who used his smaller size to reach places his siblings could not. And his roar, which had once been a tiny squeak, had become something that made the whole forest go quiet. They were no longer cubs. They were hunters, killers, the most dangerous creatures on this moon. And they were family. She knew that rescue might come someday. She knew that she might have to leave this moon and return to her human life. But looking at her 3 children, sleeping around her in the warm cave, she knew one thing for certain. Wherever she went, they would go with her. She was their mother now. Nothing in the galaxy would change that. Commander of the Dominion was bored. He stood on the bridge of his warship, looking out at the stars, and felt nothing but emptiness. There were no good wars to fight anymore. No worthy enemies to kill. The galaxy had become soft and peaceful and hated peace more than anything. They were warriors. They had always been warriors. Their entire culture was built around combat, honor, and the glory of killing strong enemies. But the strong enemies were gone now. The old empires had fallen. The new civilizations preferred to talk instead of fight. It made sick. When the report came about a human survivor on the forest moon, almost ignored it. Humans were not worthy enemies. They were small and soft and broke easily. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons of any kind. Fighting humans was like fighting children. But then remembered what had happened at Colony 7. One human, a simple engineer with no military training. She had held off a boarding party for 6 hours using nothing but maintenance tools. 6 hours. 12 warriors had died before they finally killed her. 12 warriors against one soft, clawless human with a wrench. The Dominion had put a bounty on captured humans after that. Not because humans were dangerous, but because the Dominion wanted to understand how such weak creatures could fight so hard. Decided to collect that bounty himself. He took 20 warriors with him. It was too many for one injured human female, but did not believe in fair fights. Fair fights were for fools who wanted to die with honor, wanted to win. The shuttle landed in a clearing near the crashed human ship. Trackers found the trail quickly. The human had been living near a river, about 2 hours' walk from the crash site. She had built some kind of primitive camp there. Smiled as they walked through the crystal forest. This was almost too easy. The human was injured, alone, probably half-starved by now. She would surrender quickly and would collect his bounty and return to being bored. He did not notice the silver eyes watching from the shadows. The camp was exactly what expected. Crude, primitive, pathetic. A shelter made from ship debris and crystal branches. A fire pit with cold ashes. Dried meat hanging from lines, the kind of amateur survival work that made laugh. He arranged his warriors in a circle around the camp. 20 soldiers, each one armed with plasma rifles and wearing combat armor. The human had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. This would be over in seconds. Stepped forward and raised his voice. "Human," he called out. His translator device converted his words to the ugly human language. "You are surrounded. Surrender now and your death will be quick. Resist and we will make it last for days. You have 10 seconds to decide." For a long moment, nothing happened. The camp was quiet. Began to wonder if the human had died already, saving him the trouble. Then the shelter door moved. The human female stepped out slowly. She was smaller than had expected. Thin from months of survival, her left arm bent at a slightly wrong angle from a healed break. She wore the torn remains of a scout uniform, dirty and patched with animal skins. She carried no weapon. Felt disappointed. This was the great human spirit he had heard about. This weak, broken creature who could barely stand straight. The bounty was hardly worth the fuel to reach this moon. But then looked at her face. The human was not afraid. Her eyes were calm, steady, almost peaceful. She looked at the 20 armed warriors surrounding her like they were an inconvenience, not a death sentence. And she was smiling. "You should not have come here," the human said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "This is my family's territory now." Laughed. "Family? What family? You are alone, human. There is no one here to help you." "You killed their mother," the human continued, as if he had not spoken. 2 months ago, your scouts found her den and killed her because they recognized what she was, what her kind could do to soldiers like you." Smile faded. He remembered that report. His scouts had encountered a dangerous predator species on this moon, a female with 3 cubs. They had killed the female but could not find the cubs. "The cubs are dead," said. "They could not have survived without their mother." The human's smile grew wider. Her teeth showed. "They found a new mother." The forest went quiet. Suddenly realized that he could not hear any birds, any insects, any of the normal sounds that a forest should make. Everything had gone silent. One of his warriors made a nervous sound. "Commander, I am detecting movement, multiple contacts, large contacts." "Where?" demanded. "Everywhere." Looked into the shadows between the crystal trees. For a moment he saw nothing. Then, slowly, shapes began to appear, silver eyes reflecting light, dark fur shifting colors, massive bodies moving with a silence that should have been impossible for creatures so large. 3 of them, each one bigger than a warrior, each one looking at the soldiers with the calm patience of hunters who had already chosen their prey. The predators did not growl. They did not roar. They just stared with those silver eyes, and in that stare saw his own death. The human spoke again, her voice soft like a mother singing to her children. "Myra, Juno," she said each name slowly, lovingly, "protect our home." The forest exploded, struck first. He came from the left side, exploding from the shadows like a living missile. 300 pounds of muscle and fury slammed into the nearest warrior before the soldier could even turn his head. They hit the ground together, but only stood up again. The warrior's armor meant nothing. Claws, dark as obsidian and sharp as surgery knives, found the gaps between the plates. They punched through like the armor was made of paper. They did not even have time to scream. Chaos erupted. Myra attacked from the right, her color-shifting fur making her almost invisible against the crystal trees. She moved like water, flowing between the warriors, striking at legs and arms and exposed throats. Her attacks were not meant to kill quickly. They were meant to cripple, to disable, to turn dangerous soldiers into helpless victims. They tried to fight back. They raised their plasma rifles and fired at the shadows. Blue-white light filled the forest as bolt after bolt struck trees, rocks, empty ground. But Myra was never where they aimed. She was already behind them, already beside them, already tearing into their formation like a ghost with claws. 2 more warriors fell before anyone could give an order. Commander shouted commands, trying to organize his soldiers. "Form a circle, back to back, cover all directions." But his warriors were panicking. They had expected an easy capture, not a battle against apex predators. Some of them ran. They did not get far. The crystal forest swallowed their screams. "Moved." She had drawn her plasma pistol, the one she had saved for 2 months, the one with only 20 shots remaining. She did not waste a single one. Every bolt found a target, a warrior aiming at its back, a soldier trying to flank Myra, a sniper climbing a crystal tree for a better angle. She moved with her pack, not against them. 2 months of hunting together had taught her their patterns, their timing, their rhythms. When charged left, covered his right. When Myra circled behind an enemy, kept the target focused forward. They fought as one unit, one family, one pack. Juno had not moved yet. He stood in front of the shelter, directly between his mother and the largest group of remaining warriors. His fur had turned pure black, the color of death, the color of final warnings. His silver eyes reflected the plasma fire like mirrors. 3 warriors decided to rush past him. They thought the smallest predator would be the easiest to defeat. They thought they could reach the human female and use her as a hostage. They were wrong. Juno opened his mouth and roared. The sound was impossible. It was too big, too deep, too powerful for any living creature. It resonated in bones and teeth and the primitive parts of brains that remembered what it meant to be prey. The sound said, "I am death. I am the end. I am the thing your ancestors feared in the darkness." The 3 warriors stopped running. Their bodies simply refused to move forward. Millions of years of evolution screamed at them to flee, to hide, to get away from the source of that terrible sound. Juno did not give them time to recover. He launched forward, smaller and faster than his siblings, his lean body a blur of black fur and silver claws. The first warrior died before he hit the ground. The second managed to raise his weapon but could not pull the trigger before Juno's jaws closed on his arm. The third tried to run. He made it 4 steps. Watched his hunting party die. 20 warriors, the best soldiers in his command. They fell one by one, two by two, screaming and bleeding and begging for mercy that never came. He had been wrong about humans, so terribly wrong. Humans were not weak because they had no claws. They were not helpless because they had no armor. They were something far more dangerous. They were creatures who could look at monsters and see children. They could look at predators and see family. They could take the most dangerous beings in the galaxy and make those beings fight for them, die for them, love them. Raised his weapon and aimed at the human female. If he was going to die, he would take her with him. Without their mother, the beasts would be just animals again. He never got to fire. Myra came from nowhere. Her fur had shifted to match the crystal trees so perfectly that did not see her until her claws were already inside his armor. She did not kill him quickly. She remembered her real mother, the one this creature's soldiers had murdered. She made sure he knew exactly why he was dying. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, stood in the center of her camp, surrounded by bodies. Her plasma pistol was empty. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. But she was alive. Her family was alive. Limped toward her, a plasma burn on his shoulder, but nothing serious. Myra appeared from the shadows, her fur slowly shifting back to its normal silver. Juno bounded over like a puppy, checking on his mother, sniffing her for injuries, making worried chirping sounds. Fell to her knees. Her children surrounded her immediately, pressed his massive head against her back. Myra curled around her legs. Juno climbed into her lap, far too big for it now but not caring at all. They purred and chirped and made the soft sounds that meant safe and home and love. Wrapped her arms around as much of them as she could reach. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. "Good children," she whispered. "My brave, beautiful children." The forest was quiet again. They were dead. The threat was over. But somewhere in the sky above, a ship was receiving a 2-month-old distress signal. Rescue was coming, and had no idea how she was going to explain her family to the humans who would find her. The shuttle came 3 days after the battle. Heard it before she saw it. The sound of engines cutting through the purple sky, so different from the natural sounds of the forest she had learned to know. She stood up from her spot by the river, her heart beating fast with emotions she could not name. Hope, fear, joy, sadness, all of them mixed together. Myra and Juno heard it too. Their ears went flat. Their fur shifted to dark warning colors. They moved to surround, placing their bodies between her and the sky, ready to fight whatever new threat was coming. Placed her hands on his neck, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Easy," she said softly. "Easy, these might be friends." But she was not sure. They had shuttles too. What if more soldiers had come? What if her distress signal had brought enemies instead of rescue? The shuttle appeared over the crystal trees and felt tears spring to her eyes. It was a human ship, a Terran military shuttle, painted with the flag of Earth and the symbol of the Scout Corps. The words "Soul's Pride" were written on the side in both Korean and English. Home. After 2 months alone on an alien moon, home had finally found her. The shuttle landed in the clearing near her camp, watched as the door opened and soldiers in Terran uniforms stepped out. They were armed, cautious, scanning the forest for threats. At their head walked a tall man with commander's marks on his shoulders. He stopped when he saw. Then he stopped again when he saw what was standing around her. Commander had served in the Terran military for 20 years. He had seen many strange things in his time among the stars, but he had never seen anything like the 3 massive predators that surrounded the small human woman like royal guards. The creatures were huge. The largest one was bigger than a combat vehicle. Their claws looked like they could cut through ship armor. Their teeth were the stuff of nightmares, and they were staring at him and his soldiers with silver eyes that made his survival instincts scream. But they were not attacking. They were protecting. Their bodies were positioned to shield the woman from any threat. Their eyes kept moving between the soldiers and her, checking, making sure she was safe. Understood that he was looking at something remarkable. He raised his hand, signaling his soldiers to stop. Slowly, carefully, he stepped forward alone. "Lieutenant Park," he asked. Nodded. Her voice was rough from 2 months of speaking only to animals. "That is me. I am commander of the Soul's Pride. We received your distress signal." He looked at the creatures again. "I see you made some friends." Smiled. It was the first time she had smiled at a human in a very long time. "They are my family." Nodded slowly. He did not understand fully, but he could see the bond between the woman and the beasts, the way they leaned toward her, the way she touched them without fear, the way they purred when her hands ran through their fur. "We found bodies near your camp," said, 20 of them, all dead. "They came to capture me. My children disagreed with that plan." Looked at the creatures with new respect. 20 warriors, killed by 3 animals and 1 injured woman. The military analysts would lose their minds when they heard about this. "Lieutenant, we are here to take you home, but I need to ask." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What do you want to do about your family?" His expression changed. All the softness left her face. She stood straight, and despite being smaller and thinner than anyone there, she suddenly looked like the most dangerous person in the clearing. "I am not leaving without them." It was not a request. It was not a negotiation. It was a simple statement of fact. Thought about arguing. He thought about explaining that alien predators could not simply be brought onto military ships. He thought about protocols and regulations, and the 1,000 reasons why this was impossible. Then he looked at the creatures again, at their claws and teeth, at their protective stance, at the obvious intelligence in their silver eyes. Then he looked at her crooked arm and dirty uniform, at the fierce love in her eyes, at the absolute certainty that she would fight anyone who tried to separate her from her children. Made a decision. "Get them on the shuttle," he said to his soldiers. "We will figure out the paperwork later." The trip to the Soul's Pride was strange. The shuttle had not been designed for passengers the size of, so children had to squeeze together in the cargo area. Myra kept her fur shifting nervously between colors. Juno pressed himself against his legs, making scared chirping sounds. Even Brave looked uncomfortable, his ears flat against his head. Sat with them the whole flight, singing softly, keeping them calm. When the shuttle docked with the main ship, half the crew was waiting to see the rescued scout. They had heard the stories already. They had seen the images from the soldiers' helmet cameras. They knew that something extraordinary had happened on that forest moon. But knowing and seeing were different things. The shuttle door opened. Stepped out first, blinking in the bright ship lights. Behind her came her family. Massive and dark, his healed shoulder showing where plasma fire had touched him. Myra, beautiful and deadly, her silver fur shifting in the artificial light. And Juno, smaller than his siblings but somehow the most impressive, his eyes scanning the crowd with protective intensity. The crew stared in silence. Walked through them without stopping. Her children followed, their claws clicking on the metal floor, their bodies close enough to touch her. She did not look at the shocked faces or hear the whispered questions. She had only one thought in her mind. She was going home, and she was bringing her family with her. The story spread quickly. Within days, it had reached every human colony, every military base, every news network in Terran space. The images went everywhere. With her children, the battle site with its 20 dead, the shuttle footage of 3 apex predators curling around a small human woman like she was the most precious thing in the universe. The Dominion did not know what to make of it. They had thought humans were weak prey animals who had somehow stumbled into space. They had not understood what they were dealing with. Humans did not need claws to be dangerous. They did not need armor or venom or natural weapons. They had something far more powerful. They had the ability to look at any creature, any monster, any apex predator in the galaxy and see a friend, a companion, a family member. They could form bonds that crossed species and biology and every barrier the universe tried to put between them. They had learned this lesson the hard way. 20 warriors had died because they did not understand that a human mother with children was the most dangerous thing in existence. As for she returned to Earth 6 months later, she retired from the Scout Corps with full honors. She bought a large house in the countryside, far from cities and crowds, with enough land for her children to run and hunt and play. Some nights when the moons rose and the stars came out, she would sit on her porch and sing old Korean lullabies. And 3 massive predators would curl around her, purring like engines, their silver eyes closed in perfect contentment. She was home, her family was safe, and nothing in the galaxy would ever threaten them again. Because Park was their mother, and family, as the universe had learned, was something humans would burn worlds to protect.